Are you one of those people who is overwhelmed by all of the conflicting information out there about the best way and the fastest way to lose weight? Well, stay tuned because today I'm going to be talking about the big dial movers of health. So, the first thing you need to recognize is that not everything is going to have the same impact in terms of outcomes on your weight loss, progress, or results. Some things matter more than others. There's small dial movers that don't really have a big impact on whether or not you lose weight. And then there's other things that are big dial movers that are going to have a larger impact that will definitely impact how you lose weight, how much, etc. And those behaviors are the things that are going to be doing the heavy lifting. And that's what we want to tune into today and focus on. Part of your job in your own life is understanding what matters and what doesn't, and then figuring out what is going to have the best impacts for you in terms of these outcomes. So there's a lot of information that you have to sift through out there, and it can be really tough to figure out what matters and what doesn't. So that's why I made this video, because I wanted to break it down. Often we get stuck in this cycle of restriction and, dieting where we're not allowing ourselves to have certain things, and we forget to pay attention to our biofeedback, pay attention to things like hunger, energy, stress, cravings, satisfaction level, fullness level, those types of things. We forget to tune into those biofeedback markers. Now, sometimes it's even hard for us to tune into them because we have hormone disruptions that might cloud our ability to notice those signals. So part of the journey is figuring out how your hormones are doing and if you are one of those people that can sense your hunger or not, because maybe you don't. Maybe you haven't been able to notice if you're hungry or full. And learning to do that is part of this process. Ultimately, the goal within any weight loss journey is to keep your hunger low, your cravings managed, your energy stable, to keep you feeling full but not overly stuffed and not restricted, and to make sure that you never feel deprived. And that comes from learning to eat in moderation. And that can mean different things for different people, but part of figuring out what works for you is one of the biggest tools in the transformation process. Just to start off, I'm going to throw out some small dial movers that don't really have a big impact on whether or not you achieve weight loss success. Now, they do matter to a degree, but they're not really going to be the thing that moves the dial forward. These things don't really matter when it comes to weight loss outcomes. So things like sodium, if you have too much salt in your food or too little salt in your food, yes, it might have some effects in other ways, but as far as actually losing weight, it's not really going to have that big of an impact. There are other things that matter more. Other things that don't really matter are like food timing. If you're eating dinner earlier versus later, that's not really going to have a big impact on your weight loss outcomes. It might affect your digestion and other things in other ways, but as far as actual weight loss outcomes, it's not really going to play a big role. Another thing is supplements. Supplements are great. They serve a purpose and they are a nice thing to have, but they're not a necessity as far as weight loss outcomes. Things like fake sugar versus real sugar, whole wheat versus white bread, organic versus not organic. Things like wild caught salmon versus farm raised, or grass-fed meat versus just the regular. Another one that we often feel is a big dial mover but isn't is cooking from scratch versus buying takeout or convenience foods. Now, that one is a fine line because, there are certain things that will cause you to gain weight. But if you're mindful and you're aware of what you're buying and you're shopping strategically, then sometimes it can be more convenient for you to order takeout or to order more convenience-like foods because you're saving yourself time and you can get in your macronutrient profile better than if you were to cook for yourself and take too long and that kind of thing. So I would say that the biggest dial mover really when it comes to having weight loss success would be having a foundation of nutrition and really understanding what the components are of a balanced plate. How do you build a meal to support your weight loss, to support all your body's functions, and to support your health? I break that down into a few different steps. The first one is always going to be prioritizing protein with every meal because it helps build muscle, maintain muscle, and it keeps you satiated longer than carbs or fats will. I like to make sure that you're eating enough carbohydrates to meet your activity levels and that you're able to keep your body fueled and energized with the carbs that you're eating. So if you're eating carbohydrates, those are going to be things like potatoes, whole grains, Those are my starchy carbs, things like rice, whole grain pasta. Ideally, you want whole grain pasta, but if you have pasta that's a little bit more refined, that's not the end of the world. That's not going to be a huge dial mover. It's really more about, are you getting in enough to support your body's needs and its functions? And, if you're overly working out, are you meeting those food nutrient needs with the amount of carbs? Don't be afraid of carbs, because carbs are the thing that provides your body with energy in order for it to do any activity. And if you're restricting them, then you're more likely to feel groggy or woozy during a workout or after a workout. Carbs are also great to pair with your protein after you do a workout because they help with absorption. And having that pair of protein and carbs will help keep from spiking your blood sugar. And that's going to help keep your cortisol levels low so that you're not constantly fluctuating in and out of stress. Including healthy fats like avocado, olive oil, some healthier cheeses, and nuts, seeds, those kinds of things, that's going to help with brain focus. If you're not eating enough fat, I know a lot of people are big on like low fat. You want to make sure that you're actually eating enough to support proper brain functioning, because that's one of the things that like society has taught us is bad. Carbs and fat, we have this like stigma against them. And I think too often people aren't putting those on their plate enough. Eating a rainbow of fruits and vegetables allows you to get a variety of fruit and vegetables, and that's going to help you meet all your nutrient needs so that you're able to, not have the supplements. Like ideally, we want you getting all of your nutrient needs from whole foods. So get them from a rainbow of fruits and vegetables. Having a rainbow of fruits and vegetables is also going to help increase your fiber. Fiber is what helps with digestion. So ideally, you want to be having like 1 to 3 poops a day and increasing your fiber through eating more vegetables rather than having a fiber supplement is actually better for your body, because it teaches your body to be able to eat those items. A lot of times people feel like they can't eat certain foods because they get indigestion. And sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes that's because you just don't eat it enough. And your body doesn't know how to handle it. So it doesn't have the gut microbes to be able to handle that food item. So it might create more gas because it doesn't know how to eat it. So when you include a rainbow and a variety, you're able to teach your body how to eat those foods. And that's going to make your digestion better, and you'll have better poops, and then you'll be happier because you're pooping more. Within nutrition, I also like to teach the tenets of moderation. And I've talked about this in some podcasts, but moderation essentially helps you navigate the middle between depriving and restricting yourself and overindulging, overeating on the other end. So there's these two extremes, and your goal is to eat in the middle so that you never have to give up all your favorite foods. Because I'm a foodie and I would never want you to have to do that in order to lose weight. Now, you might have to minimize what you're eating and eat in a moderate manner and not overdo it, because I think a lot of times it's not necessarily the foods that you're eating that is causing you to gain weight, it's how much of those foods. The overeating is what's causing the weight gain. So learning to eat mindfully and to be aware of what your hunger levels are and your fullness levels are and your satisfaction levels, those are the things that are going to help you stay in the middle and navigate that middle line so that you never feel deprived and that you're able to honor your cravings. I think sometimes we try and ignore our cravings, and that only makes it worse, and we end up binging on other foods later more than if we had just had a little bit of the thing that we were craving. So one of the big dial movers for me, honestly, is making sure that I have a sweet treat after every meal. Like at lunchtime, I try and keep it something simple like dried fruit or a date. And then dinner time, I will have like 2 Oreos or maybe like a little So Delicious bar, because those are the things that are keeping me from feeling like I'm restricting sweets or like depriving myself of things. And I also make sure that sometimes I have ice cream. I'm very in tune with my body, so I know that when my time of the month comes around and I'm bleeding, I will crave more carbs. I will crave more sugar, and I allow myself that time to have ice cream, to overindulge on pasta and those things that might be heavier in carbs and fats. Something else that I like to include when I'm talking about nutrition that I feel like a lot of people often struggle with is setting up your grocery list and your meal prepping and your cooking so that it is supportive of your weight loss goals. And if you want to grab my free guide, I have a free ultimate meal guide on the best, most efficient ways to do that, because I'm a chef. I've been a chef for 13 years, and I have a lot of experience with getting meals on the table really fast that also taste delicious, because nobody wants to eat bland, nasty food. So go check that out, grab the link, and give it a go. The second big dial mover that I teach a lot of my clients is something I call awareness checks. And that's really about tuning into your biofeedback. So in this instance, I refer to biofeedback as things like your hunger, your cravings, your fullness, and your satisfaction levels, whether or not you're feeling deprived or restricted. Also looking at energy and stress. Those are really big things that affect how you behave around food, how you interact, with other people, and paying attention to where your energy dips throughout the day, how stress and the stress that you experience in life, physically, mentally, whatever, how that's affecting how you're responding to food or how you're reacting to food. Paying attention to making sure that you're actually getting enough meals. I know for me, I like to have 3 big meals a day, probably also a snack, but some other people prefer 5 to 6 meals a day. And that really is going to depend on what works well with your digestion, what feels good. I always recommend having breakfast. I know a lot of people are like, "Ooh, but I do better without breakfast." Well, I would suggest try it out first, because honestly, you're not going to drive a car without filling the tank, right? So if you look at it like that, when you wake up, you haven't eaten for over 8 hours, probably 6 to 8 hours. So wouldn't it make more sense to fuel your body to be able to perform the things that you want to do as you go forward? So eating breakfast is one of the things that I really advocate for, but I also recognize that there are other different things that people like to do, like intermittent fasting and that kind of thing. So you're really going to have to play around with what works best for you. I also am a big proponent of no fasted workouts. So, whether that's you have a banana beforehand or something small, maybe a little pre-workout meal to help get you going. But I really don't think, if you're going to be working out for anything longer than half an hour, I wouldn't recommend doing it fasted. A couple other things related to food and nutrition, make sure that you're slowing down your meals. Too often we're in a go, go, go mode and we don't take the time to actually savor our meal. Slowing down helps with digestion. It helps you learn to navigate whether or not you're actually full or if you're just in craving mode. So when you slow down, your body has time to tell you, hey, I've had enough food. Practice doing that, get used to it. Too often we spend too much time watching TV while we're eating or having other distractions that are separating us, disconnecting us from those feelings of hunger or satisfaction. Hydration is super important. It can really improve digestion, and it doesn't just have to be water. Like, you can drink flavored waters, you can drink some juices, you can drink herbal teas. I really would try and stay away from things that are higher in sugar or higher in fake sugars, because your body doesn't process those as well, and it's going to spike your blood sugar in different ways. And part of navigating your nutrition is making sure that you're regulating your blood sugar so you don't have those spikes, and then you can regulate your cortisol levels, which allow you to then be more regulated with your energy. So that goes back to energy and stress being super important, and realizing that there's certain kinds of stress on the body that are good, and then there's certain kinds of stress that are probably not so good. And so, like, when you work out, yes, that's putting a stress on your body, but for the most part, working out is good for you. Occasionally, yes, you'll have people who do overtrain, and it is recommended that you do take breaks and you make sure that you include recovery days and rest periods. So making sure that the balance of the stress that you're putting on your body from a workout and the recovery time that you're getting from whatever your rest is or your sleep, that's a really big important thing, because a lot of times people are not actually getting proper recovery and they're not getting the amount of sleep that they should be getting. I mean, I really recommend getting 6 to 8 hours a night of high quality sleep. And I feel like a lot of us don't do that. And some things that play into that are you overstimulating your brain beforehand? Light exposure. Are you looking at screens? Do you have like bright lights in your house at night? those types of things are actually going to affect your ability to tune into your circadian rhythm and your ability to fall asleep, stay asleep, those kinds of things. So sleep is also a really big part of your awareness. So when I teach awareness checks, I'm including things like hunger, cravings, energy, and stress, and that covers any number of things that are related to that. So your nutrition and your sleep levels, your energy and recovery times, all of those things are included. And developing sleep routines around your sleeping. So like if you have blackout curtains, if you put your phone away, an hour before you go to bed, if you have a wind down routine, or even in the opposite direction, if you have like a morning routine and you wake up at a specific time, keeping those things regulated so that they're usually the same every day helps you to have better, more impactful sleep, because then your body knows when to expect you to wake up or when to expect you to go to sleep. So yes, I'm a raver, and I will have all nights that I stay up, but I also go to bed regularly at 9 p.m. So I have that balance, and it is disruptive, but I plan for it, and I make sure that, okay, on the days after I've gone to a rave, I make sure to get extra sleep, and I make sure to take extra time to recover from that experience. And then the last part of awareness checks is checking in with your emotional regulation and paying attention to where self-sabotage is coming up, paying attention to where you're having resistance to doing certain things, or any kinds of limiting beliefs that might be coming up that prevent you from following through with these actions. And I also feel like a lot of times we don't really realize how much energy and stress play a role in our emotions. And so teaching you awareness checks allows you to check into what is happening in the environment around you, but also what is happening internally, and how you can not fix yourself, but self-coach yourself into a more positive mindset. I really recommend therapy for everybody. I'm not saying everybody needs therapy, but it could benefit most people. And so that's one way to help you regulate your emotions and learn how to handle tough situations better. I think part of emotional regulation also comes with creating an environment for that. So when I think about nutrition, I think about creating an environment for better grocery shopping and more efficient cooking and buying, healthier items to have in the house, as well as those indulgences, so that I never feel deprived. That is about setting up my environment. When I think about my energy and my stress and my sleep, I think about setting up an environment that allows me to have better sleep and better rest periods, and creates those energy boosts throughout the day. So like if I'm doing a long stretch of work, I'm going to take a break every 90 minutes because I know that my energy will get a boost from that. That's a form of setting up my environment for success. When it comes to emotional regulation, making sure that you're in a supportive social environment, your family, your home, and your friends are all supportive of what you're doing and the goals that you're pursuing. Trying to create this environment of safety, and not so much certainty because we can't control everything, but just something that feels more grounded and safe than uncertain and chaotic. I would say the next big dial mover is going to be fitness. Personally, I believe that you can't have fitness without having your nutrition and without having your awareness, because I feel like the nutrition is there to fuel whatever activity you're doing within that fitness realm, and the awareness is there to help you navigate and figure out what it is that you actually need in order to do the fitness activities, or even conversely have the fitness support whatever your actual goals are and your desires. So when I talk about fitness, ideally, I think there should be 3 things that you're focusing on, maybe 4, depending on, where you are in life. But strength training always, that is absolutely something that everybody, I think, should be doing. And you should be doing it with a progressive overload program, so that you are actually like building with each week. Each week you add a little bit more weight, and don't be afraid of going heavy. Don't be afraid of lifting more than that 10 or 20 pounds that you have at home with your little dumbbells. Like, I don't think you're going to bulk up right away. That's not how it works. It actually takes a lot of work to build muscle and to be able to have that definition in your body. So don't be afraid to lift heavy. But I do also recommend, maybe work with someone who's done it before. Maybe work with a trainer who can show you how to do the moves and like the exercises that would work best for your body, because everybody's different. And while there are certain like movements that are useful for everyone, what works specifically for you is going to be, obviously personalized. So, weight training, I also highly recommend cardio a couple times a week. That's basically when you are pushing your heart rate up into a certain zone where you can actually feel it, like it's beating quicker and you're getting that extra little sweat. Feels like you're doing some work. A lot of times people overdo cardio and they forget about the weight training. I think you really need a balance. And you also need to balance that with just like regular steady state walking. Go for a walk, get outside, move your body. Now, I know that I'm not the biggest walker because I don't particularly enjoy walking in my neighborhood, but I love going to a walk on the trail or on the beach or something like that. Finding some low intensity movement that you add into your life, whether that is like yoga or just some stretching at home, but finding something that keeps your body moving, because so often we have become sedentary creatures and we work in chairs and sit all day, and that's just not helpful when you're trying to pursue a health goal, but even just in daily functioning. I mean, I think the more you sit in a chair, the more painful you get and like the more uncomfortable your body is. So adding movement back into your daily life, even if it's just like running in place. I have one client who just literally runs in place for 10 minutes because that's what works for her. Find a way to have daily movement that you put back into your life. And that also, that relates to environment and setting up the environment to allow yourself to do that. Whether that is you have tools at home to do workouts, or if you have to go to a gym, or if you have a friend and you have some kind of support network that helps you do that. I'm really big on people joining clubs. I think finding community and like that sense of, hey, we're both working towards the similar goal of like moving our bodies. I think that's really something that brings people together. That's partially why I really like the raving community, because we all come together because we love music and we love dancing. So it's very like helps motivate you, keeps you inspired, and you're all doing it together. So right now we have the 3 big dial movers that I've talked about so far. I've talked about having a foundation in nutrition. I've talked about developing awareness checks and paying attention to your biofeedback. And I've talked about fitness and making sure that you're including daily movement, as well as like a progressive overload weightlifting program with some cardio thrown in. And then one other really big dial mover that I think is kind of foundational to all of this is developing a vision and your values for who you want to be, what sort of identity you want to lean into, and the things that you believe are important for your life. I think a lot of people forget that part and they're like, oh, I'm just going to go into losing weight and I'm going to do the things, and then halfway through they lose motivation because they never really figured out why they wanted to do this in the first place. And yes, you can be inspired by external motivators and wanting a beautiful body or a more beautiful body, because you're already beautiful now. Too often people get stuck on the external motivators of having more definition in their body or body changes or, losing fat in areas of their body. And they forget that if you go through that body change, that doesn't mean that you're going to be happier. That doesn't mean that you're going to feel different personally. Your body might feel more energetic. You might feel like you can move more, but that doesn't mean that emotionally you're going to feel better. So I think a lot of times part of creating this vision is figuring out what makes you happy. What do you want to do with your life? What do you find joy in? Part of what I help people do is create this vision of health and this lifestyle of health, so that it allows them to go and do the epic shit that they want to do. Like maybe they want to go hike some big mountains, or maybe they want to go on a family trip and just make sure that they're able to walk around with their family members without holding anyone back. I think a lot of times having those like internal motivators of being healthier for your family, being healthier so that you can live longer, being healthier so that you can move better, those are more important than the actual body changes that happen. Yes, obviously we want body change, but reconnecting to like why you really want it and what you're going to get out of it, and those benefits really helps you figure out what direction you need to go in, and then you can map out a plan for how to get there. And that all helps you tune into like, what values do you believe in? What are you trying to make a priority in your life? Like, what are you already putting first? And if it's not your health, how can we make it so that your health becomes a value? It becomes something that you care about. For me, my values include health. But I mean, I don't label it that way. I call it harmony, because for me, living in harmony with my body, with my mind, with the world around me is my version of health. It's what it looks like to me. So figuring out what works for you and like how you want to define that, and then being intentional with how you go about your day. We do often get stuck in our jobs and stuck in the reality of life, and we forget that, we're in control of our choices. We may not be in control of everything around us, but we can control how we feel about things, and we can control how we respond to things. So when you're more intentional and you're more mindful and you're more aware of things, you're allowed to create this identity and to become this person who values these things and does this, creates this life, And then one of the major dial movers that I would say is to really understand your mind and how your behavior change works. So there is a science of behavior change, obviously, but for every individual, you are going to have different things that affect you in different ways. And you're going to have different patterns and different habits that you already have because of your cultural upbringing, because of the society that you are a part of, the communities that you interact with. You already have certain behaviors and habits that you do. So when you want to achieve weight loss and you want to achieve body change, learning those habits that you have is part of the key to figuring out how to change them and how to improve them. And I think a lot of people talk about consistency, and I want to move us more into thinking about a few components of behavior change and understanding your personal behavior change that are kind of important. Flexibility and frequency. How often are you performing habits? How often are you doing things? How likely are you to be able to respond or pivot if a certain situation comes up? Are you flexible? Can you handle change? Can you handle obstacles and challenges? And like, how do you handle those things? I know I did a podcast episode about self-sabotage, and one of the things that you handle within self-sabotage is learning whether you have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, and trying to change that so that you're more growth mindset leaning, so that you're able to embrace challenge and you're able to see that, okay, effort and hard work will help me change, versus feeling like you can't do something and being stuck in this mindset that I am not able to do this thing. So I think a lot of working on behavior change is developing those skills. One of the biggest things that I work on with clients is their ability to become accountable to themselves. Often having a coach is great, but not everybody can have a coach. So if you can train yourself to trust yourself to do the thing, then you're going to feel better off, and it's not going to feel as challenging because you believe that you can do it. So when you learn to develop that accountability, that self-accountability, then you don't have to rely on someone else, and you're able to show up for yourself better. Also tying in with growth mindset, fixed mindset, and that ability to be flexible is understanding how to troubleshoot situations so that you're actually able to continue forward and you don't have setbacks that like derail your progress or make you quit. So basically today I discussed the different big dial movers that I think are really important when it comes to building a foundation for weight loss. And those are having a nutrition foundation, so you can understand like what components of food are doing for your body, why you need them, and the different macronutrients and micronutrients that are actually going to fuel your performance or the body changes that you're looking for. I also think it's really important to develop awareness checks and the ability to tune into your biofeedback, because so often our bodies, we're just disconnected from them. And this is something that, with the way our phones are and screens and all of these things, we are perpetually separated from feeling our bodies, from feeling our emotions. And so when you learn to tune into your biofeedback and pay attention to hunger and pay attention to cravings, energy, stress, your emotions, all of those, they're actually going to show you what it is that you need. And eventually, you're going to be able to tune in to the signals that your body is telling you to know if you need to eat more, if you need to eat less. It's going to help you navigate how to fuel your body, and whether that's fueling with food or sleep or whatever it is. If you need emotional stimulation, if you need to go and connect with people, those are all part of awareness and developing that skill. And then I talked about fitness and moving your body. That is obviously super important. It plays a big, big role. But like I said, if you don't have that nutritional foundation and you don't have the ability to develop awareness of what your body needs movement wise or even food wise, how can you figure out, obviously any movement is better than nothing, but sometimes if you're strategic, you can get to the results that you want faster. So yes, you could do obsessive cardio and maybe lose some weight, but you're also putting your body in this high state of stress. Whereas if you did a combination of cardio and weightlifting, you're going to be able to build muscle, and that muscle is going to help you get to the results that you want faster. And then another one I mentioned is developing your vision and your values. And that's really about creating the dream identity that you want and this next level self, so that you can always be looking to improve. That's really big in the self-development world, that there is always room to get better. Health is not an end point. It's not a finish line. So there's always going to be something that you can tweak and work on. Part of my process is helping you realize that you can make it a part of your life without it having to be all encompassing. And, you can make it something enjoyable. Like when I help clients work through learning how to meal prep and learning how to cook foods that are healthier, I do it in a way that makes them delicious and taste good. And it's not about just the numbers and hitting those protein goals and that kind of thing, because I want you to be able to include it in your life as something that you do long term. And then, of course, behavior change is all about the transformation process. How can you make these habits a part of your life? How can you make all of these things something that are easy for you to do, something that is effective for you to do, and something that is enjoyable? Because if it's not enjoyable, then you're not going to do it. So really paying attention to, what works best for your situation, and, using that as a lever for, okay, this might be easy for me to do, this might be effective, and now I can commit to it and it's going to be enjoyable, and then I'm able to move forward. So I've taken all of those big dial movers and I put them into what I call the FEED method, which is my signature coaching system that I run all my clients through. And it's essentially broken down into 4 components. Find your joyful movement, that covers the fitness aspect. Eat real food, that covers your foundation in nutrition. Environment, when I'm talking about environment, I mean internally, so your biofeedback. And then externally, the transformation process, the environment that you're creating to allow you to go through this behavior change process. And then lastly, develop self-trust. And to me, that's really when you develop that self-trust, that's when you lean into becoming that dream identity that we talked about with the vision and the values, becoming that person that is healthy, that person that shows up in this way. So that's how I break it down. As always, thank you so much for listening. Hopefully some of this provided value. If you liked it, share it with a friend, leave a comment, subscribe, and don't forget to grab my free ultimate meal guide if you need help with grocery shopping, meal prepping, or making food healthy and delicious. And I'll catch you next time. Ciao.